This day in history in 5 minutes or less. All right, welcome everybody to the second episode of This Day in History in 5 minutes or less. With me today, we've got our awesome guest, Wayne Charles II. Wayne is a comedian based out of New York. He's born and raised New York. Now, Wayne runs a regular weekly open mic at Phoenix Bar on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Wayne, what else are you doing in the city? You're involved in a million shows. I'm seeing you everywhere.
I am. I'm on a bunch of shows. Recently, I was on Very Good Comedy Show. Got a chance to be on Comedy and Alki Show. That was a Monday night. Shout out to those guys. Just trying to get it in. Broadway Comedy Club. Catch me where you can. I'm all around the city.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. We've only got 5 minutes, so we are going to jump into the topic. We're looking at April 10th, 1925. So The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald was actually published in New York by Charles Scribner Sons Publishing on this day. Now, the themes of the book are greed, love, violence, and the American dream. Wayne, did you read this book in high school?
I think I read it. I probably had the Cliff Notes, knowing me, but I believe I read it. If not, I saw the movie.
You saw the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio?
The Leah movie, of course. There's a few of them, but I saw the most recent one.
I like it. And who's that shitty actor who's in that with him?
You talking about Spider-Man, Tobey
Yeah,
Maguire?
fucking. I hate Tobey Maguire.
Oh man.
Toby Maguire was in Seabiscuit, and I'm from Kentucky, and he made me root for Seabiscuit to die. Like that's how
Oh
that's
wow.
how much I hate Toby Maguire.
You want to take Toby to the blue farm, huh?
Right? Yeah, he's worse than Daisy Buchanan in that. Honestly, like
Yeah, Daisy.
yeah, she's something. She
She
is
was called a
something.
hussy, a tramp.
So
Jezebel.
one of the things that I really noticed with that just taking place in the 20s, like in New York, uh, the city really becomes a character in itself. But you talk a lot in your stand up and in your sets, like you really get into gentrification, especially because you're based out of Harlem, right? Born and raised.
I am based out of Harlem. I got my Harlem Night shirt on here. Speaking of the 20s, I'm from Harlem, and yes, the neighborhood's definitely changed. More of a abundance of golden retrievers running around, if you follow. But yeah, there's been some changes.
Yeah. What are some things like that you've noticed is a big shift from like when you were a kid, like things that either are not in your neighborhood anymore or I mean, I know you like joke about golden retrievers being there, but what are some really just signs that people are living out so-called the American dream, but it's also causing a lot of people in that neighborhood to be displaced.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's tons of spikes in rents, increases from that perspective. Harlem used to be the black mecca, so there was mom and pops, as we call them, independently owned black businesses that were thriving, and those definitely have dwindled down. There was a lot of jazz clubs that were black owned. Speaking of the jazz era,
Yeah.
grew up in one called Showman's Jazz Cafe, and those aren't around anymore, and that's unfortunate because of the history of Harlem.
Are you seeing any of those businesses or any of those clubs like pick up in other areas of New York that are maybe more affordable or, have things a little bit more stable still rent wise? Have you noticed any of that or is it just something we're kind of losing culturally?
I think we're losing them. I mean, there are a few that are remaining in Harlem. I'm not sure who's actually operating them per se, but a lot of the great acts are further downtown. So it's really unfortunate. But the Harlem I grew up in was thriving, and it was the mecca for black culture.
What do you think about, I mean, obviously like gentrification is something you're passionate about, where you're talking about that in your stand-up sets. What do you think about what's going on with that as the way it ties into like the Great Gatsby and how much things have, I mean, because we're talking about almost 100 years later, 99 years ago today, that this book came out. So what are you seeing with that?
Well, I mean, Gatsby was throwing these huge parties basically in the Hamptons, right? So you talk about gentrifying, those used to be the Diddy White Hampton parties, controversy aside, and now you got a guy who's a billionaire like Michael Rubin who's throwing them. So even the parties are being gentrified, but jazz was the hip hop of its day, and now hip hop runs the world culturally. So you see here and there where it's still being co opted, being gentrified for sure.
I like it. All right, we all of our guests get asked the same final question. So if you could kill anyone throughout history, and Hitler's boring, so we don't let people say Hitler, but if you could go back in and kill anyone throughout history, who would it be?
Well, I'm a non-violent guy, but if I had to do it, the guy who has the names the second as well, King Leopold II of Belgium, got to get him out of here. He took a lot of the Congolese out. Those numbers are too crazy to be roaming the earth.
Yeah, it was like 10 million, like half the population, something like that.
10 million folks dead under him. I'm Wayne Charles II. I'm a peaceful royalty member, and King Leopold II got to get him out of here.
Yeah, Harlem royalty for
Harlem
sure.
royalty, the
For
Prince of
sure.
Harlem. Yeah.
I love it. Wayne, where can people follow your comedy career and see your clips and all of that stuff?
Check me out at Wayne Charles 2 Comedy. Once again, at Wayne Charles, the number 2 Comedy.
I love it. Thank you so much for being on today. We really appreciate it. All right, guys, we'll see you next week for This Day in History in 5 minutes or less.
Take care.